Is this a pirated version of Swan Lake as performed at the Met Opera House with Christine Shevchenko playing Odette Nadil? Nope, it's episode 2 of Slavic Summer. So for this first part, I didn't want to just basically have a whole video where I was sitting and talking to you for 30 minutes. So whatever, this is just background video of me doing my makeup while I'm going to talk a little bit actually about kind of future plans that I have for Slavic Summer. Basically for Women in Translation Month, I kind of want to keep in, some non-Eastern European, non-Slavic summer writers, but I figured I would still obviously read some by Eastern European people. And then I have a couple of short story kind of essay collections from Ukrainian writers, and I would focus on the translated works by the Ukrainian authors in those books. So yeah, kind of like try a chapter, but not really. The rest of this video is me cooking, me reviewing some books, and even me trying some Slavic Baba Yaga magic, so stay tuned. And a couple things, I got some tomato paste from Zabar's for the borsch. I couldn't find the girl's recipe that I was originally looking at, so I'm going to have to use a different recipe, but I was able to find one also on YouTube with a woman who she's also Ukrainian, so similar, and it also doesn't have meat in it. That's a big thing. I feel like so many of them include meat. And then the other thing that I got will be relevant. I got this from a local place, and I think it's like a little soy sauce dish, but it's going to be for my the mavoy, which I'll explain later. Before I start making the borsch, I wanted to go over a Door Behind the Door by Yelena Moskovich. I thought this was such a kind of cool mix of prose and poetry. It sort of almost has like a play, how a play has like the character and then their dialogue, but here it sort of breaks up the dialogue, except it's just like the voice, like speaker's voice. So like My Days is sort of the title or the character name. My Days, I stay still, they go by, birds, Tanya swears at me, Tanya threatens me, Tanya tells me that I'm worthless. Hope, for a second I feel it, there are footsteps beyond ourselves, they have weight to them, visitor, and then like it goes in. And I thought it was like a cool way of designing and stylizing your work, and if you look at it and you think, oh, that might be like a little too challenging or like I'm not gonna get it, I think the narrative is sort of understandable enough that the interesting presentation doesn't distract or make it more challenging. I feel like maybe too it's sort of like almost like an epic, like the way it's described and the way it kind of goes through from character to character. I think it's a really good look too at what I would call like generational trauma, community trauma. There's things that kind of repeat and cycles that repeat, and you see how one character's hurt comes back into play and how hurt people come back in. And yeah, it's sort of this revolving door of people witnessing bad stuff, doing bad stuff, being hurt by others who are doing bad stuff. And it's very much like a domino, slightly, what would you call it? Slightly Inception-y in that way too. And it's very sort of surreal and like you're going through stuff, but this is not realistic fiction. There's definitely kind of magical realism elements at play. It's quite short and very quick, I think quite fast paced. I got through it very quickly, but at the same time, I think it's a book that should be almost read quickly, even though it does go in through like characters in their pasts. Once you get into the action, things feel like they're happening quickly, and I think that speed almost brings something into your reading experience. Like I think if you were to put this book on your shelf and come back to it, for like long periods of time, which I do occasionally do with some books that I read, I feel like with this book in particular, you would lose a lot from your reading experience by doing that. And so, A Door Behind a Door, I very much enjoyed this book. It was very good. Now, the other thing I kind of wanted to look at today was Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft, Slavic Magic from The Witch of the Woods. This is by Madame Pamita. And she does have a YouTube channel where she like talks about spells and stuff, so you could always see, like, check those out. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to go over some of the things that they have in this book. Like, you can make a vienok, which is a wreath. You can, they talk about like rusalki, which are like the Slavic version of mermaids. I feel like I'm saying a lot, but I did just wake up from a nap. I ask for your apologies. Okay, so they also have this domavik. So we call them domavoy, but for the sake of this, domavik. And so I know this sounds like utterly wild, but I feel like there's some spirit in here. Like, there is some mischievousness going on, and I feel like it's a good time to like clean up my apartment, to bring out bad energy, and then to kind of recultivate my relationship with my domavik, which is like a little household spirit. So like when you move to a new place, you ask the old one to like leave, and you like cleanse your house and ask the old one to leave, and you know, your new one comes in, and it's a household spirit. And they can like help protect against bad outcomes, and they can like protect your loved ones and stuff. And so she is a bit about like rekindling your relationship with your domavik, and about like leaving little food offerings. Basically, you want to get a plate or a bowl, something that's specifically for them, and then you leave them the food, and then like you don't like necessarily like leave it until it's rotting. You like leave it, let them have some, and then you would like throw it away after a bit. The reason why, I mean, I had a thing happen the other day where I was sitting in my bedroom, and my roommate's dog was with me, and I saw something fall. It was like out of the corner of my eye, but I could have told you exactly what the thing was that fell and where it was in my room. Like I saw exactly where it had happened, but I get up to like pick it up, the thing that had fallen, and there's nothing there. And even like the thing that it was a black bag. I know where the black bag is. I could see that the black bag hadn't fallen, like it was exactly where it was. And even if it had fallen over, I wouldn't have been able to see it where I was from, and it wouldn't have been in like that line of vision. So I'm looking around my room, like honestly kind of driving myself a little bit crazy, trying to figure out like what had fallen and where had it fallen. So I don't know, I just feel like small things like that have been happening. I'm just like, what is going on? And like seeing things out of the corner of my eyes. And whilst I don't necessarily like, how do I say this? Do I buy that there are little creatures living in my apartment that watch over me? No, but sometimes I feel like you can solve that like side of you by appealing to that other side of you. You know what I mean? Like some kind of placebo, like a spiritual placebo effect. So that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, I was going to do some stuff. There's like other things in here, and they talk about like cutting your hair, and like how you can cut your hair to like do certain things. So I was gonna just kind of take a scissors to part of my head, but when I was reading this, you're supposed to do it on specific days and at specific times in the moon cycle. So don't cut your hair when it's a new moon. You want to wait until it is waxing or full. Yeah, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bake some bread, and then the book has some rules about like if you bake your bread, how it turns out will like reflect something that could be happening in your future, kind of like predictive magic with bread. And also I'm going to like use garlic to collect like negativity. So yeah, that'll just be some fun some fun things I do from this book, and I thought would be kind of cool to include in here. There's a lot of stuff in here. I feel like a lot of it's really involved. Like, she talks about having eggs, like egg magic, but you have to have them fertilized, and it's just like, I do not know where I would get a fertilized egg, if I'm being totally honest. But yeah, so I'm gonna start making the borsch, and I will see you later for like taste tests, but also for, you know, further updates on this Slavic summer episode. Of course, when I went to go to the grocery store, I left the house with my apron on. Okay, so here are the ingredients. I'm mostly going to be using onion, carrot, cabbage, garlic towards the end, bay leaf, potato, beets, salt, pepper, and a bouillon cube. I should have gotten vegetable bouillon, but I'm just using like this like vegan chicken one. So yeah. And now for the arduous process of cutting all the vegetables. Here, it's not really in frame, but I'm taking the tops off, and I'm going to save the actual kind of beet leaves for adding into the soup. But the stalks, I'm just kind of breaking them in half, and I'm going to put them into my little compost bucket. We drop this off every Sunday, and it's super convenient, actually. But I had mentioned this earlier, the original recipe that I had planned on following, I think the woman deleted it from her channel, which is kind of sad because I really did like it. Oh, and here, of course, I always eat whatever vegetables I'm cooking, like while I'm preparing them, and then I'm not hungry by the time I'm finished cooking. But yeah. But like I was saying, so the original woman, I couldn't find her video, but I found another video also specifically by a Ukrainian woman, and her recipe was also, I would say, less involved. I feel like anything with meat is just like too much for me. But she had this great technique for cutting cabbage where you cut it in half and then you cut it on the diagonal. I'd never heard of that before, and it was super easy to cut cabbage. It shredded basically automatically. Here's before I add the beets, and then boom, with the beets, beautiful red color. So gorgeous. Okay, I'm getting ready. It's the moment of truth. It smells like my grandma's borscht, so at least I think it will be disgusting. That is so freaking good. I'm gonna call my mom right away and tell her that I'm a genius. Oh my god. So I had to make, basically I had too many ingredients, so I had to split it up into two little pots, like a big pot and a smaller pot. I think the bigger pot is better. I took this from the smaller pot, but it's like the color is better. I like it when it's not, like sometimes borscht can be like bright red. I like it when it's like more of a ruby color, but I had like way too many, like I had way too much like I had too much cabbage, so I like put some of it in a different bowl, and I basically like split up some of the ingredients. But oh my gosh, this is really good. There's a couple of like little things I didn't do according to the recipe that would be like great to try, but honestly this is so doable. And I don't know, this is kind of dangerous though. I feel like now that I've done this, like basically that was like one of the ways my grandma would bribe me to come see her, is being like, come have my borscht, which hers is still better obviously, but this is surprisingly very good. Oh my god, it's so good. Y'all, I can't even, I'm so happy right now. I could be a wife. I can marry people with cooking skills like this. So, if you live in New York, you have to go to Chama Mama. It is my favorite restaurant. It's Georgian, and my roommate, we went for her birthday because it was like a place where we could get a bunch of people in, and like everyone would have a food option. And afterwards, her and her boyfriend made their own ajaruli khachipuri, and I feel like for like a first try, like this was really good. They have farmer's cheese and then an egg, and then the heat cooks the egg, and it was so delicious. And here you see my little offering for the Damavik. I put the khachipuri in for him. Hello, time for part 2 of my video. So I have my bread that I made. So apparently, according to the Baba Yaga Slavic Ukrainian folklore, there's this ability of bread divination. So typically you bake bread on Saturday. I will say bake this bread on Sunday. I made the dough Saturday morning, forgot about it until Sunday. So it's not the best, but according to this, I can see if there will be misfortune. I'm supposed to taste it, and depending on the taste, I'll get like signs. Also, it's flavorful and heavy, which means kindness and wisdom in the home. However, some challenges may arise due to people around me, so I'll have to keep an eye on that. And then, I don't know, I feel like the inside of the bread is not, maybe a little chewy, probably not more than any other bread, but it says there is a lack of logical thinking by someone in the family, and their stubborn resistance might create trouble, which I'm a pretty stubborn person. And also, the top of the bread was like super ugly and not like a nice loaf shape. So cracks on the surface, if there are many unusual cracks on the bread, there were, it is a warning of danger. Stay vigilant and take extra precautions to avoid trouble. So I'll have to do that. I'll have to avoid trouble. We did install a carbon monoxide detector, so hopefully that'll help us avoid trouble. It was very good though. Oh, the other thing, the other spell that I did, or like ritual, is with chesnik, as it's called in Ukrainian, and that is a what did I do? Oh, here it is. So it was a home protection spell with garlic. Another way to cleanse the home is to place a garlic clove in each room overnight and throw them away the next morning by scooping them up with paper, making sure not to touch them with your hands. So yeah, we did that. And so we've cleansed the home of any bad and negative spirits. So yeah, that's a fun thing. This was actually pretty cool to do. A lot of them are more involved, but at the same time, it was a really good time, and I'm very glad, and I can't wait to look forward and do more of these things in the future. Some of them involve like a little bit more work, like getting embroidery stuff or getting a spindle. So it might be a while before I do any of those, but what I've done has been really fun so far. Okay. And the last kind of major thing I wanted to talk about in this video was Svetlana Alexievich's The Unwomanly Face of War. So I mentioned this previously. This is a book that I had started last year, actually during the Women in Translation Month, and it's a very tough read. It's like interviews with women. Some of them are pages long, some of them are just short paragraphs or even sentences, and it goes through women's experiences during the war. It lists their names, or like sometimes it'll just be like their first name and then like S dash for their last name or something along those lines. And it talks, you know, it's just kind of their interview, and they're sort of themed around different things. So there's like a chapter about love, a chapter about, you know, beauty, and different things like that. It also will tell you what a woman's position is. So if she was a partisan, if she was like, oh my gosh, a minor sapper, or like if she was in the artillery, like whatever her position was. So for example, you could have someone be like sergeant major, medical assistant in the infantry company, or private radio operator, private medical assistant. And I think it's interesting. She almost starts each section talking about her perspective, like when she went to talk to someone, and sort of the sense that those stories gave her, and then the stories of these women, sort of almost in uninterrupted by her own views, and it really feels like you are just getting to read and be in their stories. It is very hard. I think, I don't know about you, but I feel like war is one of those things that makes me cry no matter what. Like, I can't read about it in a calm way. And I definitely felt that with this book. It's incredibly emotional, and I think part of what makes it so emotional is not only hearing about the terrible stories of these women before the war, but then how when they came back, it was like they weren't respected, or, oh, don't tell people you were in the war, this will look badly upon you. Or even women who had this sense of like, oh, women on the front lines kind of like stole our husbands, or were like promiscuous or something along those lines. It's really dark to see how these women were afraid, and they couldn't feel that sense of like pride that a man can feel, that sense of like, you're a hero. And I think it's this idea that you want to have glory in war, and the knowledge, like, I think the unwomanly face of war, or vojny nie женское лицо, like, there is no way of looking at war and seeing in it femininity. Like, culturally, our views of this are just so masculine that it's hard to reconcile the fact that like women get involved in this, and women get involved in war, you know, out of many of the same reasons that men do. I think that sometimes like there's women who are like, oh, I was like chasing a man that I loved, or my husband or something, but for a lot of them it's like, no, my brothers were dying, you know, like the war took everything from me. I wanted to go fight, or I wanted to fight for victory. We were talking about victory. I wanted to participate in that. I think another thing that's really hard about this is the fact that with the war right now, it's like you're reading it, but it's almost like reading it twice. It's like you read it once, like, that's history, and then you're thinking about it again, but now you're thinking about it happening now, and the Russians attacking Ukrainians, and you're like, oh yeah, this story it's not over, it's still occurring. Holodomor and the starvation of the Ukrainian people is actually mentioned at some point in this book too, so I think it's fascinating to see too how that, and like how the purges are mentioned. They even mentioned, I don't ever know how to pronounce this, Galima, I think. Galima, which is a gulag, like a labor camp in Siberia where there were gold mines, and this is like a man's diary recount of his experiences there. It's also mentioned in this, so I don't think that the point of this book is to be like praiseworthy exclusively to the Soviet Union. I think that there is like a lot of criticism among the women who were speaking, but at the same time there are also women in this who like were fervently communists and completely believed in what they did. And I think that there are stories that are very harsh and stories that are very uplifting. There are stories about like people being amazed that they were able to show kindness and sympathy to the Germans, even though those were their enemies. They were still able to like bandage them or help them. There's one woman, and she's talking about like being in Stalingrad, and she's carrying these two men, and they're like severely burned, and she's trying to carry them to safety, but she's just one small woman, and so she's like has to carry one at a time, and then carry the other, and then go back for the first one. And halfway through doing this, she realizes that one of the men is actually German, and she's been carrying an enemy, and she's sitting there and she's like doesn't know what to do. It's like if she just leaves him there, you know, the chances of helping this other guy are better, but she's still like in her humanity cannot leave a person behind. It's a really weird thing to read about, and I think that my sense and feelings of war and the conflict of like, I don't know, like I don't have to sacrifice my life. I don't have to have I don't have to make the decisions these women had to make. But that is not because there aren't people out there making those decisions. Like there are people people who are having to decide every single day to pick up arms, like women, people like in my life position, right, are having to say, I must go defend my motherland, I must go defend my people, and I must fight tyranny and hatred. And I think it's really challenging to like be in that dichotomous space of like, well, I know how I would want to act, but at this point in my life, I've never had to prove that. So all that being said, I did not have a really wonderful, happy, joyous time reading this book, but it is still a very good book, and I still suggest you read it if you have the chance. And so I leave you with the following quote from Nina Alexievna Semyonova, private radio operator. I couldn't understand that. How could I be killed if I'd only just arrived at the front? I didn't even know yet how ordinary and indiscriminate death is. You can't plead or argue with it.